Ladies and gentlemen, all across the J area, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Welcome back to another edition of the Friday 5 Count. And with Survivor Series just around the corner, there's a great opportunity here for the Friday 5 Count because with Survivor Series, there's a great tradition of having multiple superstars coming together and forming unlikely alliances. That's why in today's video, I want to tackle on 5 of my favorite traditional Survivor Series tag teams of all time. But before we begin the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel in order to keep up to date with all the professional wrestling content that I produce here on YouTube. And with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump right into it at number 5. You see, at number 5, it's a little bit of a wild card here because I could have went a lot of directions when it came to these Survivor Series teams, but I wanted to go with one that really spoke to me, and that's 2019, a special year in Survivor Series where it was Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT. You see, around these times, NXT was arguably the best brand in all of WWE, so when they were able to accumulate the talents of Ciampa, Riddle, Damian Priest, Walter, Keith Lee, you had all these guys on one team, and it really was a time capsule of the greatness that was NXT. And I remember all the hype, seeing the likes of these young superstars coming onto the main roster, making an impact, and nearly winning the matchup itself. It's a fond memory for me, and it's interesting to see where a lot of these guys ended up with in their WWE careers, or even outside like an AEW or in the independent scene. Now here at number 4, it's a little bit of a cheat here because I talked about the traditional Survivor Series tag teams, but I had to include a War Games team, and of course, how can I not mention 2022's edition where they had the Bloodline. Roman Reigns, the Usos, Sami Zayn, and Solo Sikoa becoming one of the best groups in modern WWE history. There's a storyline that still runs to this day, of course, with the match culminating at this year's Survivor Series. How can I not mention this? Because it was the first time we had all 5 members in the ring at the same time in the first ever male War Games matchup on the main roster. It was a memorable matchup that many people still point to as the direct point of where we should match up our expectations for War Games matchups moving forward. Not only that, but we had so many storylines involved, whether it was the Brawling Brutes, Kevin Owens, his friendship with Sami Zayn and how that moved forward, but it also helped propel the Bloodline storyline into what it is today. You see, from this point on, we will go into the Royal Rumble event where Sami would take himself out of the Bloodline that led to the Elimination Chamber matchup with Roman Reigns, and then directly fed into WrestleMania 39. This is the matchup, I think, that set a lot of storylines in motion that still have repercussions to this day. And obviously, seeing the 5 of them together at one point, it still brings a smile to my heart, and it certainly gives me chills just watching this matchup over and over again. At number 3, 2, and 1, it's a little trip of memory lane for me as I have some of the old school, at least for me, tag teams in the Survivor Series matchups. But at number 3, we're going to start off here with the 2005 edition of the Survivor Series where it was SmackDown versus Raw. It's well documented that the year 2005 has a real special place in my heart, and I'm going to side up with the brand that I've always had an allegiance to. I'm even wearing the color right now, Team SmackDown. Captained by Batista, the World Heavyweight Champion, and having Rey Mysterio, a young Bobby Lashley, as well as JBL on the team, and of course the sole survivor that would be Randy Orton. Obviously a great amount of talent on this tag team, and you can make the argument that maybe the weakest link is JBL, but this is still coming off of a title reign where he held the WWE title for 280 days, a top heel certainly in the company at that point. This matchup for me and the tag team epitomized what 2005 wrestling was, and as a young WWE fan, seeing my favorites like Rey Mysterio and Batista in the ring, as well as the excitement for the potential that a Bobby Lashley could have, and just the sheer shock of a guy like Randy Orton and JBL siding with these baby faces, it blew my mind as a young wrestling fan. Again, I feel like it was a better cohesive unit than that of Raw, which is why they ended up winning the matchup. But when I look at this tag team, or rather the Survivor Series team, it really reminds me of what it was like being a young fan all those years ago, and it's very nostalgic for me for that reason. So I have to put it on my list here at number 3. At number 2, I have the 2003 edition of the Survivor Series, where it was Team Stone Cold Steve Austin as he was trying to defeat Team Eric Bischoff to keep his position in the company at that time. But you look at the talent that Stone Cold Steve Austin was able to acquire to represent him in this matchup. All Hall of Famers, all having the argument of being the greatest of all time. You have Booker T, who was a 6-time world champion and a 2-time Hall of Famer. Rob Van Dam, ECW alumni, ECW legend, Hall of Famer. You have the Dudley Boys, who have won every single tag team championship that is possible for them to win. We're talking ECW, WCW, WWE, World Tag, TNA, Ring of Honor, New Japan. I mean, these guys have been all around the world. And of course, the captain of the team, Shawn Michaels, who I think is the greatest wrestler of all time, and certainly had his history with Stone Cold Steve Austin. So much layers on top of this storyline because of the whole Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels aspect. But then just alone, when you have that much talent on one team, it is literally the super team. It's like the dream team that 1992 the Olympics had in the basketball. And just to have that much talent, and the matchup itself exceeded expectations. Go back and rewatch this matchup where you had Shawn Michaels and his team against Chris Jericho and his team, which represented Eric Bischoff. And I would say with spoilers, but this matchup is what, almost, it is over 20 years old. When Shawn Michaels goes down 3 individuals to 1, and the comeback that he is forced to make, it's something of a Herculean effort, and I still think it's probably his best showing in that second run in the WWE. But at number 1, without a shadow of a doubt, this is my favorite Survivor Series team of all time, and I think it makes the argument of being the greatest team to have ever been assembled at the Survivor Series. I'm talking about 2006 Team D-Generation X, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Jeff Hardy, Matt Hardy, CM Punk. All of the greatest of all time. You talk about Shawn, who I just mentioned is the greatest of all time. Triple H, who has every right to be in that conversation. The Hardy Boys, who are 2 of the greatest members of a tag team of all time. I just talked about the Dudleys, but the Hardys are just with them. And then you have CM Punk, who has become the voice of a generation, and at this point was only months into his WWE run. But when you have all 5 of these guys on one team, I mean, they pop out. It's a who's who of legend. And to this point, 20 years later, how can you not look back at this team and wonder, wow, what a ridiculous amount of talent. And then you go into the matchup. These guys are facing off the team of Rated RKO, Edge and Randy Orton captaining their team. And you look at CM Punk, Matt and Jeff, Shawn and Triple H, none of them were eliminated. They completed the full clean sweep, eliminating every member of the opposition while still retaining the services and the talent of their own team. It's one of the greatest showings in WWE history when it comes to the traditional Survivor Series matchup. Every single person on this team is a world champion. Every single person on this team either is or will become a Hall of Famer. So without a doubt, the easiest 5 count I think I've ever made is having these guys at the number 1 spot for the greatest Survivor Series team ever assembled. But I want to hear from you guys. Who were some of your favorite teams assembled at the Survivor Series? Who did I leave off this list? And hey, where did I go wrong? Go ahead and sound off in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed this ranking of the 5 count, and make sure you super kick the subscribe button to keep up to date with all the pro wrestling content that is on this channel. And of course, my name is Jose Ramos Jr., and I'll see you guys in next week's Friday 5 count.